Brag tags. Do you know what they are and how to use them? Pop your answers in the comments. As a teacher aide, I often used to work with children who were below national standards and not meeting the achievement requirements for their year level. And I used to also work with a lot of students who had developmental delays, and so their learning was behind where it needed to be. And something I found when I worked with these children is that despite their low level in learning in terms of achievement, they desperately wanted to learn. It wasn't a case of they didn't want to learn. It wasn't a case of they weren't interested in learning. The interest was there, just the ability to be able to learn in a way that suited them and in ways that encouraged them were what was lacking more than their need or want or desire to learn. So I started looking for different ways that I could engage these children in learning. I started looking for things I could do that might improve those sorts of things. And so the first step I took was to use encouraging words. But what I found was that children would understand and know when I was encouraging them in a way that wasn't necessarily truthful to what they were experiencing. And so I learned very quickly that I needed to make sure that any words of encouragement that I gave were given with an element of truth to them. So if a child had a maths problem that they couldn't do and they weren't understanding the concept, then encouraging the child by saying, yes, I understand you don't have that concept right now, but if we work on this strategy here or we work on that strategy there, it won't take very long and you'll understand that concept. So let's look at what next steps we're going to do and how we're going to get you to the point where you can understand that concept. And so I found words were starting to work to engage children in learning, and they were starting to gain a little bit more self-confidence in their abilities. And that had a huge impact on their achievement. And what I also found was quite often a lot of the kids, because they had various disabilities or developmental delays or were struggling learners, they needed visuals to help them with a lot of their learning. And so I thought, what about visuals that might encourage them with their learning? And that's where brag tags come in. So brag tags are simply tags with words of encouragement in. So these tags are words that encourage children to keep going. They're words that encourage children to not give up. And they celebrate both success and failure, because I think it's important that children understand that failure is part of the learning process. Failure is what will help them to succeed in the long run. Without failure, you don't get the results at the end where you've succeeded and you've learned something and you can look back and go, wow, it was a really long journey. It was a really hard journey, but I got there. So I really like these tags. They say things like, I can think creatively. Some of them say, with practice, my stamina will grow. So that one's kind of encouraging you not to give up and to think about where you're at and where you want to be. I met a personal goal, so one that's sort of celebrating success. This is one of my favorite brag tags. It says mistakes help me grow. And that's something I used to encourage a lot with my students, especially through the brag tags, was that mistakes are a key factor in learning and growing. If we don't have mistakes, we can't learn and grow. So I would set them up on a ring like this with the student's name, and then every time they were in a lesson with me, if they did something that was worthy of a brag tag, I would use the tags and clip them onto their ring. Well, the point of brag tags is that you encourage the learners to take an interest in their learning. You're not telling them necessarily what to learn or how to learn. You're just encouraging them to take an interest in their learning, and it's an interest coming from their perspective, their point of view. I used to do it in my classes where you would have a 5-week period that you could earn brag tags. And the goal was that you were not competing against everybody else in the class. You were competing against yourself. So the only challenger was yourself. The aim was in 5 weeks to get at least one brag tag on your ring. That was all you needed. You didn't need to get one every week. You didn't need to get one every 2 days. It was just one brag tag in 5 weeks. And if you could get one brag tag in 5 weeks, then you got the reward that was coming at the end of the 5 weeks. In 1 week, if you got one brag tag, your challenge the next week was to aim for 2. So you weren't competing against everybody else in the class. Some might have got 3, some might have got 1. It was just a case of you got 1 last week, let's do better this week, and let's strive for something better this week. And so I found that with using brag tags as challenging themselves, that they started to do a lot more investing in their own learning. Because they weren't competing against each other, it didn't mean they'd failed at anything. So if one student got all the maths questions correct that lesson and another student didn't get the maths questions correct, they could both still get brag tags. One could get brag tags for the effort that they might have put in, whilst the other might have got brag tags for doing really well and learning the concepts. So everybody was able to earn brag tags, and it wasn't a case of this person got a brag tag, I didn't, and I failed. So I really like the brag tags because they catered to everybody and every learning level. It wasn't just targeting those who were learning the concepts. And because kids were competing only amongst themselves, it meant that the learning environment was completely different to one that's thriving in competition. These kids came in knowing that it was a safe place for them to learn, knowing that it was a safe place for them to make mistakes. So I really encourage you to look at your classroom situation. If you've got learners who are struggling and learners who need a bit more encouraging, I would look at using things like brag tags and encouraging words. But just remember, if you're using words to encourage, that you use them truthfully. Don't tell a kid they've done really, really well when they know they haven't, because they won't strive for excellence. I also found that if I gave them a goal that was really, really low, they would often just work to get that goal. But if I gave them a goal that was above where they were at, then quite often they would strive to do everything they could to get to that goal because they knew I had confidence in their ability to do that. And so having confidence in their abilities is another key factor. And brag tags help with that because there are brag tags in the set that give you targets, that encourage you towards your goals, and they keep pushing you every step of the way without making you feel like you're failing, without making you feel like you can't do this and success is never going to happen. So I really encourage you to take a look at brag tags and find something that works for you and your classroom, but they are a good form of encouragement. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more.